Ladies and gentlemen, we have some very sophisticated business leaders here who are active in the global economy in a number of ways. And if we really think that AR is going to be a thing, I think understanding how these people look at it can be really instructive. We've had people on the stage talking about architecture, talking about finance, talking about enterprise. We've had technologists talking about the optics, the software. But let's switch to the business side. And for some startups, this may help inform you on how to build the right DNA. For some companies that are reinventing themselves from doing one thing to add this or anticipating that this is going to be key to the future business, we have a great assembly here that can kind of address some of that stuff. I'd like everyone to introduce themselves. I'm just going to say one thing real quick about them to foreshadow. You have the head of innovation for one of the largest companies in the world. I think you have 250,000 employees.
Something like that.
Yeah. So you can say more formally. So he does innovation of tax, and that's like one of the main business lines for EY. And so, as Uber has taken on the transportation business, I think the financial sector knows that there's going to be some fintech startups that can be very helpful to maybe purchase or to inform on strategy. And I'm excited to have Jeff with us. Next to Jeff is Valerie, who was one of the top leaders. Everyone I meet, and I know a lot of the leaders of Wellington Management, say she was the crown jewel of the company. I can't believe they let you walk out the door. But she has some aspirations on her own. Are you going to run for president?
No.
No, that's not why she left.
No.
But some say, what do they say? You're the billion-dollar mom? What?
Yeah.
Well, what's the term?
Billion-dollar mom.
Billion-dollar mom, that she had a lot of money to invest. And some of the decisions she makes can have huge ripple effects. If we're going to be talking about investing, I think it's also important to understand how tech companies are positioning themselves. What are their insecurities? What are their aspirations? So we have someone who is on both sides, as the CMO of one of the top tech companies in this region, in this space, and as someone who was a private equity guy for years in Jim, who's next. And then the last two on the end, I think you hear a lot of ink from their profession in this, and it'd be interesting to see what they think. Those two are VCs, venture capitalists. Some people call them vulture capitalists. I happen to know these two. They are the nicest people. I don't think they're vultures. But I think VCs have played a big role in Silicon Valley for Silicon Valley to play a disproportionate role in the global economy. And I think as we think about this 100 to 200 to, as Bob Metcalf said, $1 trillion market opportunity, I think VCs are going to make some bets. And it'll be interesting. These two can write checks. They may write some checks before they leave today. And Sarah, I think, is not at, are you at the pinnacle of your career, or you're on the way up?
Probably going up.
She's going up and has a legal background, so she could sue you in addition to invest in you. And also as a female in the space, I think some people think she's on the event side, and yet she's one of the, she could write a $2 million check and do amazing things. So I think also in a business that's dominated by men, it's also interesting to hear how a woman leader in VC can play a role. And then Phil, anyone heard of Pandora? He was the first investor in Pandora. He's had the Midas touch on a lot of investments and has invested in two AR companies using rectangles, not headsets, not some of the stuff that's way out there, but the stuff that he's very savvy at understanding where the market is, and he's had a lot of games that have been on the top, the App Store, the Apple App Store, and so he knows how to make sure his investments win. So who thinks this is a pretty interesting group to discuss in investing? And it's spread out, but I think there'll be some coherency. So, ladies and gentlemen, the investing panel. So, why don't you just go down the list?
Oh, John, thank you. I always feel so much better about myself after John introduces us. That's the nicest part about spending time with John. It's been great to get to know a few of you. My name is Jeff Saviano. I'm a tax lawyer by training. That makes me officially the least cool person in the room, I think, as I've met many of you. And I lead innovation for our tax service line at EY. As John said, 250,000 people. This is really interesting to us. Everybody's talking about blockchain, and artificial intelligence, and we think this is a really important platform for how we serve clients all across the globe. We've got a few EY people smattered around who are investing in this space, and excited to talk about some of that, John.
Great. And when you think of AI and IoT, AR could be the interface for those things. So while you guys may be thinking about blockchain, you may be able to realize the potential of it through AR being a hyphen with some of those things. And you know, on tax, I know a friend of mine who is the top real estate lawyer in the country. I said, "Oh, do you visit the buildings when they get sold?" Phil, you know Mike. And Mike said, "No, I don't. These are billion-dollar deals. It's all about making sure the taxes work 4 years out." And I think being able to visualize it in 3D with AR, from someone doing their own taxes to corporations, there's some real opportunities here. And you could buy some of these IP here to help you get another promotion one day. Maybe you'll run EY.
Well, listen, chances are you didn't come here today to think about AR and tax, but as we work with companies, and we just went through the biggest tax reform in the U.S. Back to Reagan in 1986, and it's on every executive's mind, every C-suite, and people are making decisions in companies that everything has tax implications. So we're really interested, in particular, in data visualization. Who saw the Harvard Business Review article and the AR article back in December, and the immersive with, that's really interesting to us, technology like that, how we serve clients, and we write a lot of stuff about taxes and accounting and business issues, and to have an immersive experience like that, I think, is the next wave.
Great. So billion-dollar mom.
Hi, I'm Valerie Mosley, and as John mentioned, I was with Wellington for 20 years, and I was an investor. And I left about 5 years ago, and I went from managing big, large companies, securities, to investing in small tech, very different spaces. And I see an enormous opportunity here in the augmented reality space. Also, while at Wellington, I chaired the firm's industry strategy group. And so we got thought leaders together to think ahead and think not in the quarterly focused way that many analysts communicate, but think long term. What's affecting the future of industries? Tailwinds that will propel it, or headwinds that might make it difficult. And so I'm happy to be here today to talk about that. And I gotten to meet Jeff through experiences that we had earlier, and it's really unusual to see such a big company to realize and to know themselves so well that they are able to create an internal foundry that looks around the corner, and to create a space where people can be more nimble to respond. And I think that that's brilliant. And you as investors and we as investors need to think about who's thinking ahead and what is your AR strategy. And if they aren't thinking about that, you might want to short the stock.
So Val, just before we go to Jim, 2 questions. When you were at Wellington and they were investing big dollars and you were a decision maker there, do you think those kind of institutions are going to be players in the AR space, or are they going to be followers? And then I know now that you're making investments, you were telling me about a mirror company and AR, and that you think that there's some opportunities in AR that could change our lives. Maybe just talk on those.
I do. The first question is, I think that the investment managers, management teams tend not to be the first leaders of change. They were more likely to be followers because the risk management is huge, and so they don't want to put out the money initially. However, I think that the analysts in teams will be asking managers, what is your AR strategy? They'll be paying particular attention to that. We heard the gentleman from Google earlier talking about what they're doing, and to have a market share of 100 million apps users that are going to be using different apps a few times a day, that's going to have a huge impact on revenue. So I think that the analysts will keep that top of mind, but I think that the managers of asset management firms will be slower to respond.
In the mirror company?
In the mirror company, yes. There's one company that I'm contemplating an investment in, and I'm happy to share the information with you as well. And you can go to the mirror, and if, let's say you're in a store and you put on a nice dress or suit or shirt, and you say, I like this, but I'd rather see it in green. changes to green, and you don't have to change because it's digital. If you go into Sephora and you're putting on makeup and you're trying eyeliner, the mirror knows what you're trying, and when you leave, it will give you the data of what you tried on, which ones you liked, and if you wanted to, you can buy it right away. And so it's using augmented reality to, the same mirror, if you wanted to cut your hair, often we're turning the page trying to find what fits. You can just change the different styles on your face and ask for suggestions for your face. And I think it's pretty remarkable. So it's about the user experience.
And it's probably Alexa enabled as well, right?
Say that again?
Probably Alexa enabled as well.
Yeah, maybe.
We could incorporate it in Tinder, do it real time during dates, so we could just change our look.
Change our look.
We just look at each other through our screens.
Yo, no.
Yeah, that'd be good, right?
The emotion, no, would not be good.
I love Jim. He's a great business guy. He's also a visionary. Worked with Werner Herzog and did a movie on the future. So Jim, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, no, I started off at Lucasfilm in the early 80s. This is my 35th year in tech. I was a programmer, and I spent 9 years in private equity and venture. And I think everything you need to know about the future of AR is actually here embedded in this conference. And it's kind of hidden as gems in some of the speeches. Bob was talking about the killer app. And as a tech investor in this space, you're always looking for the killer app. And he says it's going to be a network-connected app. I think it's going to be a people-connected app. It's going to be something that brings people together. It's going to be invisible. I think that the headset technology that we're talking about, and God bless everybody in here who's engineering and innovating and developing technology, because we need it all. It's going to be very, very temporary. I think about headsets as peripherals, the way we thought about them in the 80s and the 90s, like printers and scanners and things of that nature, because it's going to change very, very rapidly. The other thing that was said, and it was said by Aaron from Google, which I thought was actually really profound. I don't even know if he noticed it was. He said VR is going to be a once-a-day kind of experience, like you're going home and watching a movie. But AR is going to be an all-day experience. And that's why I think AR is going to be so much larger. But what it's going to be is it's the next way in which we interact and communicate. And I think for that reason, it is a big, big deal. And each subsequent wave of technology substantially dwarfs the previous wave. And this one's not going to fail to do that.
So I'm real excited for us to hear from Sarah and Phil. The other thing about Sarah and Phil is that they work on different coasts. So you also get East Coast, West Coast mouse, city mouse, country mouse. So Sarah.
I'm the country mouse. I'm at a firm called Accomplice, which is actually like right down the road in sort of near the lovely Cambridge side Galleria. And we're a tech VC firm. We some of the companies that we're in include DraftKings, AngelList, Carbon Black. So I don't know like how much you guys know about venture capital, but it starts all the way from a person in a garage with an idea with nothing built all the way to, pre-IPO. And where we usually come in is about $1.5 to $3 million first check, which is these days called a seed round, but that title and label is always moving. And
is it ever moving down or it's always moving up?
Always moving up. It's like, I remember I worked at a startup in 2010 and we raised a $5.2 million Series A, which now seems tiny compared to what we're seeing. That would be like a seed round these days. I mean, all the labels are made up. It really doesn't matter. Like the things that matter to us are amazing people doing something that they genuinely care about. And that's important because I think we're all here because we know this is going to be big and we genuinely care about it and want this to be a reality. But there are also people who just see dollar signs and, they want to be where the money is. And I think part of our job is to sniff those people out, because when you have pitfalls and when things get inevitably hard as they do building a company, then you might not have the willpower and the desire and the passion to stick around.
So in terms of your portfolio, how much do you focus on AR?
So we have a couple things in our portfolio, and then I have some personal angel investments, but I want to build that up. So that's a big part of my focus today.
And then what's unique about East Coast, because we're going to hear from Phil?
I really think the West Coast doesn't think too much about Boston, and we spend a lot of time thinking about the West Coast. But what's unique about Boston is the talent coming out of the schools like MIT. There's a lot more kind of hard tech out here. I don't want to brag on the West Coast, but you'll see consumer apps for, the Uber of this new thing that you don't
Phil,
really
have
need.
you ever invested in hardware or you're just software? Primarily software. Yeah, Angry Bird ripoffs, great.
But, I think with events like ARiA and with MIT and with kind of like all the smart people that are here, we do have a chance to own a big part of AR and in this region, and I really hope that we do.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the reasons that ARiA has started here and we are going to Stanford next is we want to help Boston be one of the capitals of augmented reality. And we think people like Sarah writing checks to innovators that are here, collaborating and facilitating innovation, that we can be a leader in this region. Phil, what are you seeing? You've had 2 successful games that have some AR component. I mean, Pokemon Go, 9 billion kilometers traversed in 6 months. And Pokemon Go isn't really AR if you really unpack it. But I think the use of technology to look out, like is this a market that you think is real, or it's too early and you're looking for making returns on other things?
So we do look at markets when they will become real. And so just as a way of background, Phil Sanderson at Ridge Ventures, we're a software fund. Entertainment software is a piece of that. And we look for tectonic shifts in markets. Right now we're doing a lot in big data, machine learning, AI, so forth, natural language processing. AR is part of that thesis. And we looked at VR initially. I've been very vocal saying it's not going to be there in the next 3 to 5 years. I've been saying that in articles and Twitter and so forth. I believe it will be a massive market.
How many people follow you on Twitter?
Almost 200,000, something like that.
Right.
But
So just know, that's the power. Like, how many people follow you on Twitter?
Less than 200,000.
Yeah.
so
These guys are going to really shape the market. I mean, these guys can make big decisions, but I'm hypothesizing they have a disproportionate amount of clout and can play a big role. I'm curious if you guys agree or disagree, but yeah.
So big shift. So AR is a big market. We need to make sure as investors, their companies grow asset value along the way. If it takes 5+ years to develop a market, that's too early for venture capital. We do believe there are opportunities today in AR. So we have companies who are doing industrial applications in AR because you can create minimum viable product, put it in a customer's hands, they can use it, they can pay you for it right away, and then you can develop that. That's important. You mentioned Rovio knockoffs. We do have a Rovio knockoff. The company would hate me if I said that, but some of the people do come from Rovio. It's a Finnish company called Next Games that went public last year, like Rovio did in the NASDAQ Nordic. And they create a Pokemon. They're going to create a Pokemon Go style game with zombies. AMC is on the board with us. They're doing a Walking Dead game. And that's one where people are going to come together, like with Pokemon. And they're improving on Pokemon, taking the best of clans and collaboration within games. And we think this will be very successful. They did a press announcement on it. And they had over 2 billion people read the press about it. So people are excited about AR opportunities in gaming and in industrial applications. We're looking to fund more companies in these categories.
So I know one of the games that you invested in used Power Rangers, stories, or content, and Pokemon Go is 80s nostalgia content. How important is the content dimension for some of the gaming to kind of move the vector of AR, Phil?
Well, I think IP-driven applications are important because they're very relevant and topical. More importantly, they attract users without an initial upfront cost. I like to say good IPs are like a performance-based cost per install because they'll naturally attract users and then you pay the license holder on the back end, so it's performance-based, versus so many games today where you'll pay $5 to $7 for a user. Hopefully, they'll stay over time, and you'll be able to monetize them, and their lifetime values will make up for the CAC. But that's just within gaming. I think it's important to have popular IP in other applications as well to really get things going in many cases.
So you guys, I'm real interested in having Jeff on this panel because it's sort of a use case. a big part of the economy is tax, and I don't like peanut butter and chocolate, Reese's Pieces. I don't know if people would think AR and tax immediately, but I also think there could be some opportunities here, and be interested, if you were advising Jeff, or if you think there's some opportunities here. What do you guys think in terms of AR and tax?
It's often about the user experience, and I think Jeff is onto something when you can go to a client and show what the savings might be in 3D because it resonates. And if E&Y is the only one that's demonstrating that, whereas your competitors are not, they're thinking, wow, they're more creative, they're more innovative. He's head of innovation, let me listen. And as well as these are tax saving strategies, not just written down, but experienced. And I think that draws you to your client. It draws you to your service provider in a way that is new and different. And at the end of the day, as we know, people don't always remember what you say, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And if he can walk into an office and say, if you work with us, we can help you get this to the bottom line and show it visually in a fun and engaging way, I think that would be remarkable. The question always is, what's the cost? But I'm interested in what Phil has to say, too.
Yeah, I was just going to talk, the one intersection of tax and what we do, work with startups, is I'm on the board of the National Venture Capital Association, NVCA, and I spent a lot of time last year meeting with congressmen from the House Ways and Means Committee about the tax reform that we referenced. And one thing I understand, and I think we all need to understand, is that Washington, D.C. doesn't really understand Boston or Silicon Valley. And some of the propositions about saying options should be taxed as soon as you get the options, like that could have destroyed our industry and destroyed innovation. So we're trying to educate Congress about how important tax is to fostering startups in the United States. The top 5 market cap companies in the United States are all venture-backed, and startups create jobs. Almost 20% of the GDP of the United States is from startups, and that's what we're all doing here, or many of us relate to startups even if we're at large companies. So tax is a big part of that, and just making sure, DC understands that is critical.
Yeah, it is a really good point. You look at what just happened, what we all went through, and tax reform affecting all of us personally, but how does it grow an innovation community? And if you're a big established company that is very profitable, there are a lot of changes that you'll find very helpful, the rate going from 35% to 21% alone. But if you're a young company, if you're not profitable, then the rate change doesn't really matter. The retention of the R&D tax credit doesn't really matter either. So I think it's important. Many would say that tax reform may leave us with an economy that is more suitable for innovation, but they really break it down into young companies that young companies may struggle. There really wasn't a lot for them in this package. There was no help for training and education of a workforce, or one tool that was on the table at Congress was that they did not follow was to have a refundable tax credit. So if you don't have any income, you could still receive some cash back. And is there anything more important to a young company than cash? And getting that from the government could have been impactful.
So what I'm interested to hear from Jim and Sarah just on using EY as a case study. And then what I'd like to hear from Jim is, say there is a startup that these guys have some tech that could be helpful in visualization. Say these guys have some ideas. How would you go about piloting that and introducing that and making it into the new normal at a company that's like a super tanker and takes 50 miles to turn? I'm not saying that you're a bureaucracy, but you're not a startup, and if you're heading innovation and these guys have innovation to offer, how would you go about doing it? And we can insert other industries here for tax, but I just feel like this group could weigh in on that. So Jim, Sarah, any thoughts on this as a case study?
I don't really know what you just said. Like, what was the question? Do you guys know?
I'll interpret it. I think that, tax is certainly an interesting area, but I think that, one of the things, again, let's go back to what Bob was saying. The reason Bob is a good guy to talk to is because venture capital is about pattern recognition. The stuff that's going to make money in the future is stuff that's made money in the past. And what we're talking about here is if Bob said, he thought that, when Steve Jobs put the Ethernet port in the next computer, which was a horrible failure, by the way, that was not the change of the world. And it wasn't the internet then. What really made the year of the LAN was the laser printer. The laser printer was the motivating factor for companies to buy and network PCs together. I know, I was there, I was at AST, we sold laser printers, and we sold them because people didn't want to buy a $5,000 printer and put them on every single desktop, they wanted to share them. And so local area networks were deployed to share laser printers. So the question is, in the workspace today, whether it's at E&Y or Deloitte Touche or IBM or wherever, what is the level of productivity that companies are trying to achieve, and can 3D or 7D visualization of data get them to where they want to go faster? Mark Sage was talking about, do I need to walk to this drawer and open the drawer and look at this drawing and then walk back to my desk and do something? No, that's kind of idiotic. He's right. Why do it? So we need to figure out what the killer app is. And the other thing that's interesting about VC and AR is a singular idea when you talk about headsets and optics and occlusion and visualization, but it's so much more than that. It is AI, it is machine learning, right? It is contextual computing. And so, the great thing for a VC is you don't have to sit there and say, okay, we're just going to look at headsets or geolocation technology or nanomaterials. We're going to look at the whole ecosystem of it. So what it really comes down to is that there's three elements that are so critically important. Well, actually four. Val and I talked about this yesterday. I said to Val, look, without innovation, without execution, without marketing, you're going nowhere. And she said, yes, you need money too. So that's what this panel is about. So if I've got innovation, execution, and marketing, and Phil could give me the money, and we have a go-to-market strategy. That's what I'm talking about marketing. It's where can I go into E&Y to really move the needle, to prove to that organization that this is going to save them and their clients millions and millions of dollars? That's where this is going to make sense. Yeah. And it's going to be big.
So, Sarah, in terms of this panel, I thought having the head of innovation for, I know you're not a publicly traded company, you're Fortune 100 or private
partnership.
But one of the major players. How does he help lead AR in his company? And I think part of it is watching things that VCs are doing and watching other tech trends. So he's I'm using EY as sort of a case study around AR. Did you want to comment on that, or should we go to?
I mean, most of my day is with companies that it could not be further from E&Y. So I'm looking at companies that are like 5 people working out of our office at Accomplice, so it's...
But I would argue that some of those 5 people could be the future business for a 250,000 person company in a much nearer future than ever before.
Yeah, I mean...
And Uber and Airbnb and Facebook, I think, are examples of that. They once were 5 people.
She wants to figure out how to get E&Y accountants to play, fantasy football while they're at the office.
DraftKings.
I think that would be the last thing that we want to do.
Yeah.
But it is, look at where we are now as a big organization of a few 100,000 people and other similar big corporates too, that even 5-6 years ago, there were fewer corporate funds, fewer corporate venturing. And now we are forced to, and we're finding that there's lots of value working with startups, that we're getting away from the not invented here syndrome of having to hire developers and think about client problems, and for us in the accounting and tax and business advice worlds that we have to invest in communities like this. And I think that I've seen this metamorphosis at our firm to accepting. So you have 5 people in a garage that started something. We have examples of starting. We just bought a company last year. Was 2 people developed a mobile app called Tax Chat that you can file your taxes from your mobile phone. Who wouldn't love that, right? Take pictures of your documents and then just send it. We've got teams around the world that'll prepare your taxes for you. There were 2 people, and they had spent maybe $1 million on developing this technology. And going through that process is new for us, but that's the future, that we don't have to invent all of this within our firm. We need to team with the people in the garages in order to look at where and let's face it, tax and accounting is on the first on the list of what could be disrupted from these new technologies, and we have to do that to survive.
The hardest part of what Sarah and Phil do is timing. You know, my favorite quote in venture is, another word for being early is being wrong, right? That's the way it works. You can have all the vision in the world and you can have the greatest idea, and it just may mean that you just delivered the Newton of today. And the Newton didn't go very far. And so what's going to be the Palm Pilot? There's a Palm Pilot somewhere out here that may have a 2 or 3 year really great run. It may be Magic Leap, but it may not be the technology that becomes the iPhone. So that's the big part, the hard part of their job is to parse that stuff.
I talked to John Scully a few months ago. He was on this floor, and I was talking about the Newton. And you know, the one thing I gleaned from talking to him was, I think he may have brought the presenter kind of performance to Steve Jobs. That before John Scully, I don't think Steve Jobs was into like the, you know, pulling off the black cloak and you know, Scully is you think of the Newton and him, but I think Scully had some other things that were helpful. Let's just go down the list this way. Anything you want to say about AR and investing? You guys have been a great panel.
Yeah, timing is important. AR is in the early innings, but there are a lot of exciting technologies that I've seen out there that we're continuing to talk to. We're going to make more investments in AR. I think it's going to be a huge market. I do think it's going to be a technology that people will use throughout the day. I do think Snapchat is an AR company, as is Pokemon Go, and in its many forms.
The glasses, you know, they were software, and then they did the glasses hardware. I don't think that did so well. What do you glean from that?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're trying to be a lot of different things. The key is they've touched the nerve of the way younger people want to communicate with each other, and you could use that as a platform to grow beyond it.
If someone wants to work with each of you, also say a way to, you know, collaborate with you or
Sure.
be successful capitalists with you.
Well, my Twitter is @SanFranciscoVC, and my email is phil@ridge.vc. It's the easiest way to get me.
And then if he likes you, his 200,000 followers will follow you.
So I think you mentioned the killer app a couple times, and we don't know exactly what it will be, but there will be this kind of fabric of an operating system that connects everything in AR. You know, like, how many of you have read Ready Player One? Show of hands. So that's about VR, right? But there's this operating system in virtual reality where everyone lives, works, plays, et cetera. And I think we're going to have a collaborative layer in AR, maybe in the camera, right? Where instead of having an app, everything is a lens overlay that you opt in or out of. But we're all going to need to collaborate to decide, all right, who gets that ad on that space of wall right there? Or, you know, what types of information are you displaying? It all has to play together. So I think whoever builds that layer is going to crush it, and that will be very interesting to see. So to get in touch with me, I'm Sarah A. Downey on Twitter, and I'm sarah@accomplice.co.
Yeah. And in terms of women in tech, I think this is a lot of open space here. What role do you think women will play in inventing this new wave of computing?
I think it's a big one. You know, there's a lot happening. There's women in XR groups everywhere. There's a lot of meetups. There's a lot of activity in this space. It also, you know, this has been 2017 was a rough year for women in tech and in Hollywood, but I think it was necessary and important to bring those conversations to light, and I'm hopeful that things will be more egalitarian going forward.
Right. Do you have a checkbook on you today? Or?
Yeah, I'm ready to write like a couple million right after this.
One-page term sheet, right? Yeah. I think that, you know, what we've said for the past couple of decades in looking at new technology is the maxim is that things are application-driven. And I think that still holds true today. The application I want is, you know, the very unobtrusive set of glasses or contact lens that allows me to walk through here and see everybody I know on LinkedIn or how far they are from me. The fact that I'm connected with John on LinkedIn means that I'm probably 1 degree away from all these people, you know, or 2 degrees. So, but there's going to be, you know, things are going to be driven by application. I think timing is extremely important, and I think that the peripherals, which I'm calling, you know, the headsets and the platforms that are going to display the optics, I think those are going to be very short-lived. And so the content creation, the platform that Sarah talks about, the authoring tools are going to be really, really valuable.
Yes, and I don't know the mix of those in the audience that are investors or innovators, but I do know that this is a space that is going to be growing, and you want to be in it. You want to make sure that you're asking old school companies, are they thinking about it? Are they looking forward? And if they aren't, beware. And I would agree with something that Jim said that we talked about yesterday. There's a four-legged stool that you want to look for when you're thinking about investing. And it's exciting. I do also believe in the networking. So you asked a question about, I could see when somebody sends us Excel spreadsheet over the internet, instead of just seeing numbers, they'll be able to see visually what something will look like when you're thinking about strategy. Where's the growth coming from? And department heads will be able to say in a more fun and engaging process, this is where the costs will be cut, and this is where the revenues will be generated. And I think that experience will be great. And we're talking about companies, but I think it's going to help also in social areas. So we talked about the Me Too movement. I think AR is going to show up in many different areas. So, and you asked about the power of women, and the power of the purse is just, it's palpable, actually, because in the next 5 to 10 years, women are going to take over in terms of having and controlling the majority of wealth. And that's something.
They already have it.
They
I don't know
already
what you're
have
talking about. Yeah.
No, I mean, but seriously, most people don't think about that. But women are controlling increasingly decisions in households, and they have much more control over wealth than most people really realize. And so I just think you just to answer your question. And I'll stop. And to reach me, I'm vmosley@valmoventures.com.
Well, if I could
$1 billion
add,
mom.
I'm at Jim McNeil on Twitter, and I'm at Jim at McNeil.com, and the last name is IEL.
And the real Val Mosley, @the real Val Mosley.
A real Val Mosley. Well, it's been really exciting to see the consumer application and to rub elbows and to watch the presentations. I have a daughter who's on a study abroad trip in college, and she sent me a Snapchat yesterday of she was dancing on the wing of the plane through her Snapchat, and you know that's fun, and to see the consumer.
Are you sure she wasn't dancing on the wing of a plane?
I'm almost sure, although I don't want to know what happened on this trip, but I think that was AR. And it was really cool, and there's so much that we're seeing from a consumer that I look at our world and our big ocean line or big institutions, and what's really interesting to me is how big, complicated organizations work and how AR can help those organizations. And we talk about data visualization from flat 2D to 3D. You know, there are thousands of people in organizations making decisions every day based on data that's old and flat and antiquated, and this will liven it up, and it'll engage, and it'll change decision making. Therefore, it'll change the dimension of companies. But it's also, we haven't talked about, it's about how people work too, and how AR and VR can help bring people together. Big global organizations, how can they come together with these new technologies and facilitate teams that work together differently with this technology? So, you know, again, it's that for big organizations, how this is not on the radar right now, I don't think, and it's organizations, John, and communities like this that I think bring it out to the forefront. Great. I can be reached Twitter @Jeffrey Jeffrey Saviano.
And what's so exciting about this field is in so many different industries. I mean, we've heard in ARiA, entertainment and medicine and healthcare and education and BAE systems, right? So military, it's pervasive.
Yeah. So just in closing, I think you mentioned a correction in 2017. I think the way we're hyperly connected, and yet these iPhones and Android phones make us disconnected in some ways, and I think AR is going to connect us to each other and connect us to the physical world in ways that I think our technology may be getting in the way of. And so I think the people who have access to resources can help facilitate that, and it can come faster or slower. And I think during the Nixon administration, Nixon had to resign, but during that time they were going to unveil some elements of the internet, and they had to put it on hold because the there were things going on in the government. But I think timing is everything, and I think there's going to be some interesting timing in our lifetime that's going to make contextual computing a thing. And the people who are playing on the business side of it are going to either make it go faster, or slower, or screw it up. And so let's here's to progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John.